This is chapter 27 of The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings by Thich Nhat Hanh, and we're on the third part, part C. The chapter is entitled The 12 Links of Independent Co-arising, where we left off in part B. I just said, because of craving, grasping, and coming to be, there will be birth and death, which means the continuation of this wheel or chain again and again. When artists illustrate the 12 links of interdependent co-arising, they often draw a blind woman to represent ignorance, a man gathering fruit in the jungle, or a potter at work to illustrate volitional actions. A restless monkey grasping this and that for consciousness, a boat to represent mind, body, a house with many windows for the 6 senses and their objects, a man and a woman close to each other to represent contact, a man pierced by an arrow for feeling, a man drinking wine for craving or thirst, a man and a woman in sexual union, or a man picking fruit from a tree to represent attachment or grasping, a pregnant woman for coming to be, a woman giving birth for birth, and an old woman leaning on a stick, or a man carrying a corpse on his back or shoulder for old age and death. Another way to say that artists sometimes depict the 12 links is to draw an embryo in the womb for consciousness, the child just before birth for mind and body, the child from 1 to 2 years old, when his or her life is dominated by touching for the 6 senses and their objects, the same child from 3 to 5 years old for contact, and an adult for desire or attachment. There do not have to be exactly 12 links. In the Abhidharma text of the Sarvastivada school, it says that you can teach 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, up to 12 links. The one link belongs to the unconditional realm, asamskrita. The 2 links are cause and effect. The 3 links are past, present, and future. The 4 links are ignorance, volitional actions, birth, and old age and death. The 5 links are craving, grasping, coming to be, birth, and old age and death. The 6 links are past cause, present cause, future cause, past result, present result, and future result. Because ignorance and volitional actions exist in consciousness, and the 6 ayatanas exist in name and form, the Mahanidana Sutta, the Buddha lists only 9 links. At other times, Buddha taught 10 links, omitting ignorance and volitional actions. Sometimes when the Buddha taught interdependent co-arising, he began with old age and death and the suffering that accompanies them. In the sutras that do not include ignorance and volitional actions as links, the Buddha ends by saying that mind-body is conditioned by consciousness, and consciousness is conditioned by mind-body. The Buddha never wanted us to understand the 12 links in a linear way, that there is a line going from ignorance to old age and death, or that there are exactly and only 12 links. Not only does ignorance give rise to volitional actions, but volitional actions also give rise to ignorance. Each link in the chain of interdependent co-arising is both a cause and effect of all the other links in the chain. The 12 links inter are. In the tendency to see the teachings of the Buddha as an explanation of how things are rather than as a support and guide to practice, the 12 links have been misunderstood in many ways. One way has been to see them as a way to explain why there is birth and death. The Buddha usually began the 12 list with old age and death to help us get in touch with suffering and find its roots. This is closely linked to the teachings and the practice of the Four Noble Truths. It was after the lifetime of the Buddha that the teachers, more often than not, began with ignorance to help prove why there is birth and death. Ignorance became a kind of first cause, and even though the Buddha always taught that no first cause can be found, if ignorance exists, it is because there are causes that give rise to and deepen ignorance. The Buddha was not a philosopher trying to explain the universe. He was a spiritual guide who wanted to help us put an end to our suffering. Two other theories based on the 12 links evolved after the lifetime of the Buddha. One was called the 3 times, and the other the 2 levels of cause and effect. According to these theories, ignorance and volitional actions belong to the past. Birth and old age and death belong to the future, and all other links from consciousness to coming to be belong to the present. It is true that ignorance and volitional actions existed before we were born, but they also exist in the present. They are contained within all the other links, which include the so-called links of the present and future. Regarding the 2 levels of cause and effect, at the first level, ignorance and volitional actions are said to be causes, and consciousness, mind-body, the 6 ayatanas, and contact are said to be effects. The second level, feelings, craving, grasping, and coming to be in this life, lead to birth and old age and death in a future life. Theories like these are not entirely inaccurate, but we have to be able to go beyond them. All commentaries and theories contain some misunderstanding, but we can still feel gratitude to these commentators and theorists for taking the teachings in a new direction to help people transform, while basically conforming to the teachings of the Buddha. When we hear from commentators that some links are causes, namely ignorance and volitional actions, and others are effects, namely birth and old age and death, we know that this is not consistent with the Buddha's teaching that everything is both a cause and an effect. To think that ignorance gives rise to volitional actions, which later gives rise to consciousness, which then gives rise to mind-body, would be a dangerous oversimplification. When the Buddha said ignorance conditions volitional actions, he meant that there is a relationship of cause and effect between ignorance and volitional actions. Ignorance nourishes volitional actions, but volitional actions also nurture ignorance. Ignorance activates consciousness by producing feelings of discomfort, craving, boredom, intention, and aspiration. So these feelings are called volitional actions. Once these feelings are active in consciousness, they make ignorance stronger. The tree gives rise to and nourishes its leaves, but the leaves also nourish the tree. Leaves are not just the children of the tree, they are also the mother of the tree. Because of the leaves, the tree is able to grow. Each leaf is a factory, synthesizing sunshine to nourish the tree. The interbeing of leaf and tree is parallel to the interbeing of the 12 links of interdependent co-arising. We say that ignorance conditions volitional actions, but ignorance also conditions consciousness. both through volitional actions and directly. Ignorance conditions mind-body as well. If there were no ignorance in mind-body would be different. Our 6 organs and the 6 objects of these organs also contain ignorance. My perception of the flower is based on my eyes and on the form of the flower. As soon as my perception becomes caught in the sign flower, ignorance is there. Therefore, ignorance is present in contact, and it is also present in feelings, craving, grasping, coming to be, birth, and old age and death. Ignorance is not just in the past, it is present now in each of our cells and each of our mental formations. If there were no ignorance, we would not become attached to things. If there were no ignorance, we would not grasp the objects of our attachment. If there were no ignorance, the suffering that is manifesting right now would not be there. Our practice is to identify ignorance when it is present. Grasping is in volitional actions, feelings, coming to be, birth, and old age and death. Our infatuation, our running away from this or toward that, and our intentions can be seen in all the other links. Every link conditions every other link and is conditioned by them. So I'm just going to hold up to the screen here 2 graphs, 2 graphic images that were in the book. One on page 233, it's called Figure 7, the 3 times and 2 levels of cause and effect. And you can see at the bottom down here is birth and death, and at the top is cause and effect. And I'm not sure that all of this can be read. It's probably backwards, and I don't have the camera to give it to you in a different way. So that's one of the graphics. And the other one is called the interbeing of the 12 links. And on one side, you can see that there is old age, and the other side, volitional actions. And this graph goes all the way around from top to bottom. I'm holding it here long enough so that you can take an image. Okay, there you go. So that went from ignorance, volitional actions, consciousness, mind, body, 6 sense organs and their objects, contact, feeling, craving, grasping, coming to be, birth, old age, and death, all somehow related to each other in a circle, and ignorance going out to each one of them individually. And at the bottom of that interbeing of the 12 links, it says, ignorance conditions and is conditioned by the other 11 links. This web would be too difficult to discern if arrows were drawn from each link to all the other links, but those lines should be envisioned here. So as long as you got that. And on the first graph, the 3 times and 2 levels of cause and effect, that one, I'll just read from the top down. On the outside it says past on one side and cause on the other. In the middle it says ignorance. Right below that, volitional actions. And then in the next section, in one of the top middle section, says present on one side and effect on the other. And that's called the first level of cause or effect. And within there you have consciousness, mind, body, 6 sense organs and their objects, contact. And we start to get to the lower side of that middle section, There's feeling, craving, grasping, coming to be. And then at the bottom, it says the second level of cause and effect at the bottom. On one side is the future, on the other side is effect, and you have birth with old age and death at the bottom. I'll just continue reading to finish this section. With this understanding, we can abandon the idea of sequential chain of causation and enter deeply the practice of the 12 links of interdependent co-arising. Though it says in the sutra that consciousness brings about mind-body and that mind-body brings about the 6 ayatanas and so on, we must understand this as a way of speaking and nothing more. We have to see the 12 links in a broad, open way. That'll be the end of Section C, and we will go on to Section D in the next video.